Welcome, everybody. So I was told to use the mic for those that are viewing on Zoom. Sometimes it's hard to hear. So there are a few people logged into Zoom. There is a handful of people here in Barber. Thank you, Susan. So we'll just go ahead and get started. This will be being recorded, so folks will have an opportunity to see this at a later date if they were unable to make it today. For those of you that don't know, there's some coffee and tea and cookies outside. Please feel free to get up and help yourself out there. Bathrooms are right to the left. So we'll get started. I want to welcome everybody to the University of Maine at Augusta. My name is Amy Line, and I have been honored to be here today to help share this film with all of you. And we're fortunate enough to have David Peckham, the producer of the movie, here with us. So if David would like to come up, he'll say a few words about the movie and himself, and then we'll show it.
Thank you, Amy. The Voices of Hope documentary series came about in 2019. My wife Karen is with me here today. Our son is an alcoholic, and he is doing very well in recovery, but we wanted to understand addiction better. And we started a program of research and then a documentary series that we thought might be an hour or so long. And I met Cindy Valenti, who is here, and she was actually the producer of the Veterans episode. We had done 9 episodes, and Cindy lobbied hard for a Veterans episode. So we have Cindy to thank for the Veterans episode. And I'll also tell you that we did a showing in Portland before it aired on Maine Public. And after the showing, Cindy decided that it wasn't good enough yet. So she went back to the drawing board and made some changes to it. And what we have today is what actually did air on Maine Public. And her standards have been very, very high for this program. Very thankful for her. The last comment I really want to make is that I started this program, again, like I said, in 2019, thinking that we would educate ourselves about the science of addiction. And we have used this vehicle to try to help other people understand the science of addiction. What I didn't expect to learn, and we've learned repeatedly, especially in this Veterans episode, is something that is hard to put our hands around, but I'm going to call it the energy of recovery. And so it's one thing to understand why someone falls into a pattern of behavior or attachment that is so devastating that many don't come out. But what is even more amazing to watch is the people that do come out and end up not only lifting their own lives, but the lives of people around them. And that's why I think probably this Veterans episode has perhaps become our favorite. So without any more discussion, let's just roll the film. Thank you very much. Students Empowered to Independency, who produced Voices of Hope, thank MEMIC for sponsoring this important program.
While not all veterans struggle with the transition from military service to civilian life, many experience life-threatening conditions and trauma requiring treatment. Please be advised that tonight's episode contains some scenes of actual war footage.
But I didn't truly realize the level of trauma and the exposure to trauma that combat produces until I went there. And you just don't know. Literally, people are trying to kill you every day. And you're trying to kill them.
Pretty shortly into that deployment, I had to make a decision. Are you going to try and make it home, or are you going to try and do your job? And I think that was pretty common with our unit. We just had to accept the fact that we probably weren't going to make it home. And once you were able to do that and kind of mourn yourself, then it made doing your job so much easier.
When you go down the road in a vehicle, you're hyper focused again. You have to put it out of your mind that every trash bag could be an IED, or you'll drive yourself crazy.
So my name is Travis Mills. I'm a retired United States Army Staff Sergeant. I served in the 82nd Airborne Division, and on my third deployment to Afghanistan, I happened to set my backpack down in an IED, the roadside bomb. And when it went off, it took out portions of my, arms and legs. I became one of 5 surviving quadruple amputees. And I was fortunate to make it through my injuries. There was a lot of surgeries and doctors and nurses and just a wide array of things that went into my recovery process.
One of the things that was very difficult was I went to the morgue every time that one of my people was killed. My commander and I would go to the morgue and put the awards that the individuals had earned onto their body bags. And that's something that's obviously still makes me struggle, because I realized that I could be talking to a kid and seconds later he's gone. He's never coming back. It was a privilege and an honor to be the last person from the unit to say goodbye to these young men before they return to Dover, to their families.
These are the voices of Maine veterans who, like many of our friends and family, become attached to addictive drugs and alcohol, and who often struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder. This series is intended to draw attention to this reality while humanizing, educating, and elevating the potential for change. For those in need, the people we profile demonstrate that transformation and serve as an inspiration for those still struggling. Please join us as we introduce you to Maine's Voices of Hope.
Somebody packing the ammunition for us had laid this flag, but they had taken the time to write on this flag, "Destiny Angel, be my angel, watch over me, for you can see my destiny." Our hearts are full with dreams of home for those who make it and those who don't. Wipe away our loved ones' tears. Guide them through their daily fears. Keep us strong, show us the way, bring us home, home to stay.
Listen as Maine veterans describe the gritty role of war and their personal struggles to cope with the aftermath.
It's not a job when you're in the military. It really is a lifestyle. So it's a 24/7 society. And then when you think about the kind of the culture in the military, that kind of the really kind of work hard, deploy hard, and then there's the hang out and party piece of that. We're going to party hard and play hard kind of a mentality. So alcohol is a huge part of that kind of culture.
I was the first member of my family to graduate high school, attempt college. That didn't work out so well. So I joined the service. I left when I was 17. Interesting enough, actually, on deployment was my first drink. I never really drank before that. So I went to Iraq. It's a war zone. Things happen. Inability to adapt or readapt to a normal environment, I struggled with. And so substances allowed me to be in social settings and not freak out.
When you join, you are basically writing a blank check for your life to the country. They harassed us, even our counterparts, our co-soldiers. Two of us were raped because of being a lesbian. So I suppose today's terms would be considered a hate crime. Therein began my drinking and using to escape.
So I served in the Marine Corps from 2009 to 2013 as a heavy equipment operator. It was a super rough deployment. We ended up losing 25 guys, hundreds wounded. We were actually deemed combat ineffective at one point, and they were sending guys straight from training over just to kind of fill holes because we didn't want to, give up or quit. But it was over there when I realized that I was starting to struggle. I couldn't sleep. I was getting sleep meds from the corpsman, and just angry like all the time.
Giant impact for me was my best friend from college was killed 2 weeks into that deployment. That's early on in that deployment was pretty rough. And he was killed down south. He was a Marine lieutenant. I never grieved, losing him. I had no idea how to.
Combat or combat-like situations and maybe some of the traumas that come with that. It's not always easy to express that, I was scared. There was a lot of fear. So it's easy to suppress a lot of that.
When we think about veterans transitioning back from either active combat or whatever deployment they might have had, I think recalibration is an excellent word because it is a difficult transition for many veterans.
At the time, I couldn't really identify what it was, but I mean, it was this loss of community, identity, purpose, all of those things. Was in a relationship that was complicated. She had her stuff going on. I had a lot of my stuff going on with work and trying to figure out how to live civilian life. And it was funny because she recommended yoga. And, I remember at the time, I was just like, not going to do yoga. Like, why would I do yoga? That's not going to help with anything. That's not going to help with any of this. Yeah, yoga, not to sound over dramatic, but it legitimately saved my life. Our breath in particular and meditation and physical movement and yoga and these different things, impact our nervous system and impact our overall health and our ability to sleep and eat and digest and our immune system. It helped me get to a point where I felt like I could ask for help and actually, dive deeper into therapy and dive deeper into just what exactly is going on with myself.
It's notable the change that took place. I began isolating from everybody. I depersonalized my relationships with my coworkers, with my friends, my family. Unfortunately, as I look back during that period of time, while it served me in my career, I lost a great portion of my life. I would be in a room with family functions and things and not have a clue what was going on because I was so in my own head. And that was the only thing that was important to me at that time.
I wasn't, when you ask, how did I reintegrate? Well, I didn't, because I intentionally avoided it. And I look back now and I did that because I was afraid of who I'd become. I was afraid that the things that I had done on the battlefield made me, I look back and I kind of looked at myself as an animal, like a savage. And I felt that because I had done things in combat that I would never be able to reintegrate back into society. I didn't know how to do it because there was two sides of me. There was the actor. I used to refer to myself as, when I quit this job as a contractor, I said, my acting career is over, and everybody started laughing. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, you don't know me. I don't even know who I am. So I put this act on so I could be successful. I went and got a master's degree and all this other stuff, these external validation things. And yet I was still afraid of who I was and didn't know who I was.
They're very mission focused when they're deployed. They know exactly what they're doing every day, every minute of every day. And so when they transition back to civilian life, sometimes just being presented with so much time and opportunity and choice can be difficult.
When I got back from deployment, I came back to Texas and all my family's in Maine. I was actually going through a divorce at the time. And I was just really lost. My brain and my body were not in sync with one another, and kind of running in opposite directions. So I think I turned to substances to smooth it all out, so to speak.
I couldn't leave the house without a set of keys or something in my hand and looking around. I couldn't go into a restaurant without having my back to the wall. And all the while trying to keep this a secret, without telling people. This is why I'm like that.
So I went over to Afghanistan due to addiction and looking to save my house and stuff, I took a contracting job in Afghanistan to make up for some money. And I had to return from over there and move with my children up here to Maine. From that point is when it really went off, I'd say, for me with my addiction. And that big part of that had to do with not being able to relate to anybody out here. I was a single father driving around a minivan with a 3 and a 1-year-old daughter. And I couldn't really relate to people on the outside here. And when that happens, that kind of makes you recluse into your own head.
Came back home, and then I really knew that something was wrong. I was getting violent at work with junior Marines. Arguments at home with my wife were escalating. And then I found out she had been cheating on me. So we ended up getting divorced. I was just super angry. I was on all these meds that the docs gave me for PTSD and whatnot. I like to call them the zombie cocktail. I couldn't feel anything.
We lost way too many veterans, especially to overdose, unintentional or intentional, to suicide. And when you work with somebody in the mental health capacity and we lose them, it takes an emotional toll. Sorry.
I walked up to the edge of the road and I looked up at the sky. At the time, my belief system was definitely flawed. I looked up to the sky and I said, God, if you're really out there, take me. I can't do this anymore. So I closed my eyes and I walked across the street. The vehicle went behind me, and on the back of my jacket, I could literally feel the mirror scrape across the jacket and my hair splitting around my face. The second that happened, I died inside all over again. And it was because the truck didn't hit me.
So one night I had gone out to a bar with my brother-in-law, actually. And on my way home, I was pretty drunk, and I just decided, I don't want to be alive anymore. So I drove off the road doing 120, and somehow missed every tree in the tree line. Made it 100 yards in, hit a boulder and stopped. Got out and immediately thought to myself, like, you're so useless, you can't even kill yourself.
The veterans are incredibly honest with it. They will tell you, if they trust what you're doing, if they trust the program, they will tell you, yeah, they're going to hurt myself today.
Suicide is an easier way out than dealing with the conflict in front of you. And sometimes when we don't have hope, that seems that the only door that's available. And sometimes it just takes somebody saying, no, there's a door over here you could use too.
They come back from their service and they're really struggling with the transition of not sure what the next step should be. And I think that's why they end up in our program in suicide prevention, because that not knowing what to do, not knowing where to turn, leads sometimes to these thoughts of wanting to hurt oneself or wanting to actually act on suicidal thoughts.
So I think sometimes this is perception that veterans have of themselves, that I need to be strong enough. I need to not let somebody else know that I'm struggling, because if I do that, then I got to admit that I need help. And if I need help, what does that say about me?
I did walk into the VA in Bangor, and I didn't even have a DD 214 on me. And I was always told VA sucks, this, that, or the other. It takes so long to get in. Well, I can say full-heartedly that the VA saved my life. Because I walked into the clinic that day and I was at about a 9, and the guy said, you look like you need help, brother, sit down. And I said, I don't even have a DD 214 form to show my military career. And he told me to take a seat. And I think if he probably would have said, you got to go do this, that, or the other on the computer, and I would have walked out that door, I don't know if I'd be here today.
The VA has put a lot of time and energy into it, into helping us. And I am internally grateful for it. I would probably be dead if it weren't for this group. And I know that sounds dramatic, but if you look at the statistics, there are so many soldiers out there, ex-soldiers, veterans, that are homeless, that have died via overdose, suicide. It's a pandemic out there.
Collectively, what we really do well at VA Maine is our ability to assist veterans through levels of care. We're able to offer veterans hospitalization for detox. We can get them referrals to residential programs, including the intensive outpatient program, which I run, support groups, individual therapy. And really what it comes down to is once they walk through the door, we're going to take care of them from kind of nuts to bolts, start to finish, and move them to where they want to be within their own recovery.
There's something that I notice a lot between veterans and civilian people is the concept of team, because you are broken down into the team concept or the mission. And then that's where you learn to work and not for self. And I see that a lot on veterans. They're a lot mission oriented. They're a lot team based. And when we don't have that back here at home, we don't know what to do. And I like to look at it like we're kites without weights.
Just like anything in medicine, we do it based on life-threatening. So what's the most life-threatening issue here? Is it the physical issue? Is it the mental health issue? Is it the substance issue? You know what I mean? So we order it in that way. And then we come up with the treatment plan based on that.
One of the vital components of recovery is our ability to offer an intensive outpatient program here at VA Maine. Our whole goal is to help you reconnect with yourself throughout the 6 weeks. And it's got its roots in cognitive behavior therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, 12 steps, as well as support groups.
The VA is not the VA 20, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. It is a new VA. It's a new Veterans Affairs that understands and cares about us now. The medical care is better. The mental health care, they put so much time and energy into it. There is help out there now. I would succumb right back to being a closeted drunk, a closeted user. And I don't know what would happen to me if I went back there. To go to these meetings, to go to Ed's group, the rehab groups, keeps me alive. It's as necessary as air.
My one message to veterans: come, walk through the door. That is the first and hardest step that you're ever going to do in achieving your recovery goals. Once you do that, you'll have a team of professionals. You'll have my team, our team, and we're going to do everything we can to help you achieve your goals, to rebuild your life, to find that purpose, and to heal those relationships. But the most important thing, we can't help you if you don't come through that door.
Amongst recovery, I mean, I think the biggest challenge for myself, people, places, things, I had to change everything about myself. It's amazing to discover who you are all over again. Or learn things about yourself that you never knew existed, or the person you become because of things, obstacles you've been through and have overcome.
So I start from very humble beginnings. My mother dropped out of school in 8th grade. She had her first child when she was 15. She had four children before she was 24. My father obtained his GED at Thomason State Prison. In 2004, I witnessed Zakawi beheading Nicholas Berg on TV and in Anbar province, and that really drove me to want to go be part of rebuilding Iraq. What was unique about Iraq and Afghanistan, I feel, is that half of our force there were National Guard and Army Reserves, and many of us did multiple tours. A large part of our force is firefighter, EMT, police officers, people that already have that emotional trauma from the jobs in the civilian world. And then we go to Iraq, and there's a lot of killing, and the killing that happens in war isn't like in the movies. It's a very violent environment where, in my case, in the infantry, we're trying to kill the enemy and they're trying to kill us every day. That's what we're doing. We're doing our best to find a way to kill the bad guys, and they're trying to kill the bad guys too. All depends what side you're on, right? And we did a lot of that. And so when I came back from Iraq, I was still in that hypervigilant state. I found that the trauma that I was exposed to, and not just exposed to, but the trauma that I delivered on others, made me quick to anger and maybe quick to emotion. And so when I'd open up those files of the traumatic events that I had witnessed and imposed on others, it made me very emotional. And when I first come back for the first few years, I couldn't speak of Iraq really without becoming emotional. And even to this day, 17 years later, I still am emotional sometimes when I think about the events that occurred there as a result of my anger, I think, and as my emotion. And so I went to Togus Veterans Administration and I got some help. I did some outpatient work, about 16 weeks of it. And my counselor and I would sit in a darkened room with a recorder between my legs, and he'd have me recount events that happened there that were particularly traumatic. And when I first started, I wasn't able to do much of it without breaking down. I mean, 10 seconds into it. And I was doing the first person. I would say things like, Bulldog 7, this is Razor over. Go ahead, Razor. And so the radio transmissions and, what are you feeling? Dirt in my teeth, dehydrated, headache, diesel smell, the diesel engines, those sorts of things. And over time, it diminished. As Sheriff Liberty, as Warden Liberty, as Commissioner Liberty, as Command Sergeant Major Liberty, Bronze Star, Fallujah, infantry guy, if I can say, hey, I need help, and recognize I need help, you can too. And I'm here to tell you that it's not dishonorable. It's not disgraceful to admit that you need some assistance, and you deserve it. Your family deserves it, and there's a way back. And it takes some time to do that.
In Maine, it's not just the VA reaching out to help veterans. Some veterans do wind up in prison. But even when the walls close in, there is still hope.
It's important for us to identify, what brought people to prison, and often with veterans, it has, a direct correlation to their service and post-traumatic stress, and that can sometimes result in, self-medication, some anger maybe that may have brought them to incarceration. So we try to work with them as we do with all of our residents, and so we create a veterans pod. In the pod, they also have the America Vet Dogs, and the America Vet Dogs are really important for not only the dogs to train for release to veterans on the outside, but I find it's very therapeutic for the handlers also. And the Vietnam veterans coach and mentor the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, and that mentorship, that co-location has been very helpful in the therapeutic process for those veterans. If somebody does become involved and you're a veteran and you're involved in the criminal justice system, you can go to the Kennebec County Jail for the short term. If you do get state time, you can go to the Maine State Prison, and you can get that continuity of care. So we make sure we take care of our veterans from the moment of arrest to the transfer out of the system. And then we give a warm handoff to, we have an organization here in the state of Maine called the Maine Military Community Network. All of the people that are doing veteran services, all of the well-meaning organizations fall under that umbrella, and we all work together to make sure we have a warm handoff. This person can get housing, treatment, get some VA assistance if they're eligible for that. And that's worked very, very well to help these individuals to transition back from combat and back into the community.
Because I am serving a life sentence, I serve as a peer reentry facilitator. When I got out of the military and when I left my house from my parents' house, I failed to transition into adult society twice. And that failure to transition into independence is what led to me serving a life sentence. And I want to help people make sure when they're transitioning into society from here, they don't fail to transition as well.
The wraparound services that happen immediately upon arrest, they're referred to the Veterans Court. All the way through the journey, they're surrounded by other veterans, the district attorney, the judges. They all have a greater understanding and have been deliberate in saying, we recognize your service has resulted in the damage to you and to the resulting behavior. I can say to the veterans, the Veterans Pod, I understand. I had issues also, but there's a way out. And the way out is counseling, mentorship, brotherhood, all of that stuff that we miss from our active duty service.
One of the best things for me since I've been here is in this pod, and it's raising dogs, service dogs. And it's a way of completing service. Well, I was still in the National Guard when my crime happened, so I didn't finish. This is, to me, a way of finishing. I'm producing a tool. The dogs are essentially tools that help people and maybe even save a life. Somebody having a bad day with PTSD, they think about killing themselves, because a lot of veterans do. They'll look at that dog wagging its tail and change their mind.
Don't fall into that, as I did as a drill sergeant, telling you, don't contaminate my army with your weakness. suck it up, drive on. I don't want to hear you complaining. That whole mentality that works very well in combat and in peacetime in the military, that doesn't work well when you transition back into the community. The work that we do is difficult, trauma producing, and will leave you emotionally scarred if you don't take care of it. And I'm here to tell you that there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you get help, life will be much better for you.
The bond between a dog and a soldier is deeper than most. This relationship is one of immeasurable healing and love. Mission Dogs seeks to be of service to all Maine veterans in need.
Get off the counter. Sit. You know better. Just smile over there.
So I've always been an athlete. I think I started about the same time that I could walk and, learn to run and stuff like that. I started in soccer as a little kid. I played middle school field hockey and then high school varsity field hockey. And then I got a field hockey scholarship to college. I've always been one that goes 100% to whatever the goal is. And so, I joined the military. I didn't want to be just in the military. I wanted to excel at it. My whole family is Navy and Marine. So of course there's a good rivalry with me going Army. I was living in New York at the time at Long Island University when the attacks on September 11th happened. A lot of people I knew joined because of that. A lot of people that I'm still in touch with from the service, we all joined for that same reason. I joined the Army in October 2004, right after college. I joined the delayed entry program and then left immediately after graduation. And I served as a military police officer in the Army. So I was overseas on peacekeeping missions. And unfortunately, I was injured in the line of duty, working with the local population where we were. So I suffered multiple fractures, my skull and my cheekbones, my nose, my jaw, and then also got a spinal cord injury. I got stabbed in the back. So I have an incomplete spinal cord injury that ultimately led to losing both legs. I also crushed my left arm and lost a few fingers on that hand and some range of motion and things there. So honestly, going from fairly elite military and always being an athlete and active and all of that to what they called 100% disabled and severely handicapped was more mentally traumatizing, I think, than the actual physical injuries were. Something I never really considered about getting hurt. They told us that we might die in service of our country, and I was fine with that. But they never said we'd get hurt or how to handle any of that. Came home from the military, started at the VA. I was introduced to the polytrauma team and met with them regularly. And at one of their assessments, they went through a 3-page list of things they said I would never do again. That I wouldn't walk, I wouldn't talk like this, I wouldn't ride a bike, I wasn't going to be allowed to live alone because from the brain injury I have epilepsy. So I can't drive or cook or basic things that we take for granted. They recommended that I apply for a service dog. Unfortunately, it's usually a 2-year process to get a dog and get it fully trained and things like that before they graduate. So I was paired with Moxie, I think in 2009. Moxie was absolutely my inspiration for dog training, for service dogs, for providing these dogs to veterans and other people in need.
I spent 4 years in the Army, almost 5. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan. PTSD kind of weighed me down and started weighing down on me very heavily. I started using drinking to self-medicate. 3-4 years ago, I thought I was going to be dead. I thought there was no way I was going to be able to get my life back on track because all the steps that I was taking were just, they're hard. It was like I was doing everything for the first time. Just getting out, I guess it was the big thing for me. I was very, very sheltered. So when I started this program, it kind of jump-started my life again. And I was able to kind of go back to who I was before I was weighed down by PTSD.
We came home and it was like, go home, thank you for your service. And we didn't have the greatest welcomings. And we just left and got out of our uniforms and we went about our lives, or tried to. And this is the kind of place Mission Working Dogs is. I mean, they open their arms to you and they're there with you all the time. And when you graduate from here with your dog, they've got your back.
We tailor the dog to them and their disabilities. So some of them need more balance work. Some of them, it's PTSD skills, like front where they block in front of them, or block where they block from behind so that you can't approach too close. I know a lot of us aren't huge fans of people sneaking up behind us. The dogs are also trained to nudge you and alert you that someone is coming. We have them trained to fetch and retrieve a number of things. even if the person doesn't necessarily need it right now, if we know they're aging, say Archie, for example, his dog is trained on fetching skills too. So that if he accidentally drops the leash, she won't run off. She'll pick it up and hand it back to him. You know, skills like that, skills like fetching your medicine, fetching a water out of the fridge, anything you drop, opening and closing the doors, answering the door. You know, my dog's at my house. If I know someone's coming and they ring the doorbell, my dog can go and open that door for them. Stuff so that if my legs hurt or I don't have my prosthetics on at that moment, the dog can fill in for me. They'll stay here in the cabin for 2 weeks and learn how to use the dog and bond with the dog, and then take classes in here in the training center. And then they'll have to take practical tests together to prove that they're a bonded team, both for the public access test and restaurant training to graduate.
I don't think I would have had the opportunities that I've had the last, year or so, if it wasn't for this program.
Mission Working Dogs is a godsend. It's a gift from heaven. She's my hero, my angel. I told her at graduation, you're my angel.
Oh, you're gonna be a future working dog? You could. You think?
I knew I was moving to Maine, and we started the nonprofit with the idea to give care packages. And we did $5,000 donation from Kelsey and I. We did care packages for, the first, year we had ourselves going. And then after going on those trips, I thought we can bring people to Maine. We can bring families out here and do things adaptively. So we did that, and we had a real proof of concept for 2 years at different various camps throughout Maine. And we realized there was a life for this. And then we went ahead and found this property here, the Elizabeth Arden, estate she built in 1929. We went ahead and renovated it with people believing in us, and we opened the doors in 2017 officially. The idea of it, if you will, was because I used to go on these cool trips with Walter Reed, and I'd learn how to go downhill mountain biking and snowboarding and mono skiing. Believe it or not, I rode horses and just a bunch of really awesome things. And I was injured to the point where I needed what's considered a non-medical assistant. I needed help with my arms on, my legs on. I still need that help to this day. Can't button my pants. So I got to take somebody with me. My wife would go on those trips with me. And the adrenaline rush and the thrill and the excitement I got from those was just all-time top 10, amazing, realizing I could still do things and not live life on the sidelines.
So we have two sort of premier programs. We have a family program and we have a PATH program. And then we have several other auxiliary programs. The part that sets the family program different is that we bring the family here too. We recognize that recovery is not an isolated process and nobody does it alone. People's definition of family varies. Sometimes it's a spouse and kids, sometimes it's a parent or a battle buddy or a sibling, but we don't discriminate against that. You're allowed to bring a guest here regardless. And that is something that's not as common. But on the hardest day, who is that veteran going to reach out to, and who's going to take the brunt of somebody's hard day? And it's whoever is in their village. So we take a lot of pride in being able to bring them here and then also support them while they're here.
People come here to live life off the sidelines. That was one of Travis's main goals. And boy, I think we hit the nail on the head by doing that here. We have families out on the lake, out on a kayak, who never thought they could do something like that. We have families who experienced dog sledding in the snow and had never seen snow before. A man in a wheelchair can do our ropes course. A man missing both legs can do a ropes course. A woman who had traumatic brain injury due to service to her country. She can come here, do arts and crafts. She can come here and learn to work out in our health and wellness center and feel comfortable doing that.
So Warrior Path program that's based on a concept called post-traumatic growth, which is simply this idea that through suffering and struggle comes this opportunity for growth. And we specifically kind of point that towards veterans or first responders, because when you look at our training, things that kept us alive, these valuable skills like situational awareness, right? Being able to kind of detach your emotions. Those are extremely valuable. They keep you alive downrange. But when you apply those things here back at home, the way that you did in combat or, on the streets as a police officer or EMS firefighter, whatever it is, they're not really conducive for building relationships. And one thing that we do know is, relationships are extremely important to being happy. There's actually studies that say that that's really the only thing that matters. But if you can't connect with yourself, you can't connect with other people, you're going to be miserable.
So when I went to PATH, like I said, I got this answer of, okay, first of all, this is the way, this is the reason that you're like this. It makes perfect sense. And secondly, there's everyone out there that's had trauma is like me, just nobody's talking about it. So then I was like, well, so I wasn't the only actor that it turned out, and that alleviated a huge thing. So with that gone, then I started to get educated about what post-traumatic growth is. And I always want, I don't want to be labeled by, because you get sympathy. Oh, I'm a combat veteran. People feel sorry for you. I didn't ever want that. I wanted to just live a life of meaning because I had witnessed so much sacrifice and experienced so many things that it made no sense that my life would not be of value. So I got this education about post-traumatic growth, and then that led me to be able to, the most rewarding part of my life, which I'm having now, exceptional relationships with people that I never would have had before. The connection that I have with these PATH guides, we talk about things that even I wouldn't talk about with guys that I was in combat with. My relationship with my wife, my sisters, and then the students. This is I would say, probably the most profound act of service I've ever had, is to serve as a PATH guide and to have someone come up to me and say, you know, something that you said kept me from killing myself.
Oftentimes we talk about emotions and feelings, and that's not a subject that the warrior community is really comfortable with. But the reality of it is, and we tell them, human beings, you have emotions for a reason, as a part of your function, right? In order to express and get out some of this stuff that you're holding back, right? That's why you have these feelings. Don't hold them back, don't repress them. We were trained to repress them from a young age, a lot of times in our childhood and then through our service. You have to keep it together. You can't show weakness. Well, the reality of it is, it's not showing weakness, it's being human.
These three things can decide where you are living your life, right? Are you sad? You're living in the past, right? Because we're sad about grief, some kind of loss. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a person. It could be identity. It could be a job. It could be whatever. Are you afraid? Then you're in the future, right? Anxiety. You're afraid that something that's happened in the past is going to happen again, right? Or you can experience joy, which is in the present. And the present is the only place where change is possible, right? We can't change the past and we can't control the future. So we need to be able to focus and live in the present. We teach breathing and grounding exercises to help people come back to the present. PATH isn't about removing struggle from our lives. It's about being able to struggle well. I know that what I do every month, I give people the skills that they need to be better. Whether or not they take that, that's not on me. You can lead a horse to water, as they say. But that's, I mean, it's my purpose. It's why I'm here.
You are just as deserving. You cannot help others until you can help yourself, until you love yourself, until you are living a productive life where you were learning, where you're still struggling, but you're struggling well. This is training for you to help others. And if you're already in that field, you're already privy to wanting to serve. This is a way to help you to continue to serve. That's what this place is all about. It doesn't matter if you have one arm, one leg, if you have a TBI, or, you know, if you're in a wheelchair, we'll get you up on the ropes course. If you want to stroll the grounds, we'll get you a track chair and you can stroll the grounds with your family. We'll make anything happen here.
You guys ready?
Just like Travis Mills, other Maine veterans are finding ways to make a difference with their own unique programs.
I ended up having to, after about 5 years of kind of shutting myself off up here, that I couldn't relate to anybody, and almost checking out at 32 years old. I had to get rushed into the hospital, and I was needing to give 4 pints of blood for gastro bleeding inside. I was in the ICU for 5 days. I'll remember my children beside me at the bed. I think they were 7 and 5, or 6 and 4, and The doctor was talking to my father at the end of the bed, and he said he's got 3 to 5 years left at this. I wasn't even going to see my children graduate high school. My family offered to me, Nick, would you like to go in and get some help? And I had just gotten back from a place. I had been to 2 places on the outside to get help, one down in Florida and one in New Hampshire. And once again, I couldn't relate to anybody there. I didn't feel in place. My story was different than I thought. I almost didn't make it into the VA. I almost made it in because a coworker at the time suggested I should go in there to get help. But in my mind, I was an Air Force veteran that didn't see combat. So I didn't deserve to have the benefits of the VA, and they should be there for people that really were in conflict. The team I work for now, I feel almost saved my life in the VA. And I got down to a place that helps veterans in Bath, New York. And I got off the bus and walked across a pathway there, and a veteran got off his riding lawnmower and came over to me and said, "You look lost, brother. You here for the domiciliary?" And when I walked into that place, I felt at home. And the reason I felt at home, because I was back around my brothers and sisters that I didn't realize how much I was missing over the last 6 years that I almost checked out from. I wrote a song about my daughters. I think for me, writing stuff down has always been hard, and even in therapy and stuff like that, they're always saying journal, and that's never been something I've been able to do. So I tried to sit down and put some of my thoughts down in a song. You became clear. Wanna see what you become. Gotta stop focusing on these groups. Like, let's just say the guitar. You say you want to learn to play the guitar, but when you say you want to learn to play the guitar, that in turn is giving you something to focus your mind on to get you out of here. Because I know I don't like being alone up here. This guy comes up with some crazy thoughts. So get your mind out of that, and then it gets you playing. Like this afternoon, we're going to be going to a guitar jam get together. So it's like-minded people, but that in turn gets you friends, gets you part of something, gives you purpose.
Played guitar since I was 14, about 45 years. Played it off and on. Had a problem with PTSD and depression, and wouldn't really play my instrument at all. If I did, I didn't get much enjoyment out of it, and I rarely played it. My counselor asked me if I wanted to go to Guitars for Vets and play guitar with a group, and I decided I'd sign up for lessons, and I did it. This was about 2 years ago. Graduated the program after 10 weeks of 1-hour instructions, and now I'm an instructor, and I meet with Guitars for Vets 3 times a week.
Have a whole fleet of loaner guitars that we give them so they can take a guitar home. They don't have to have a guitar. They don't have to ever have played. Then when they finish that, they are a graduate of the program and they get a brand new acoustic guitar, either donated by the National Guitars for Vets, or in our case, we have a lot of community support from various organizations, in particular the Elks, who have given us guitars to give our graduates.
The guitar is there as a constant. It's just something I go to every day, and gives me, starts my day with structure. I often can't sleep at night, and I wake up and I'll play guitar for an hour or so, and I'm able to go back to sleep. Before that, I would wake up at night and I would be awake for hours staring at the ceiling, not able to sleep. So that's one of the ways the guitar has healed for me.
Well, so a couple of my students, former students, they have had issues with addiction, prescription medications and other, and it's almost therapeutic sometimes just to sit there on the couch at night, take a simple chord and just strum that chord. You can feel the vibration of the guitar. It's calming to people a lot of times, and it's a way to focus on something other than whatever the addiction is. So people do tell me that that's very helpful.
For me, it's been a way to give back. I had a long 25-year career in the Air Force. I'm not a combat veteran, I haven't gone through what some of these people have. I like being able to support them and give them something back.
Well, I had sought services from the VA several years ago. And through that, I was introduced to Nick. Nick was running a group that I was assigned to. And one day, Nick shared this vision he had. He was reluctant. He said, I got this idea. And we got to talking about it. And he said he wanted to start a pen making group. I'd never heard of it. I actually laughed. I laughed quite heartily about it.
It was about 2.5 years ago when it comes to this group. I had heard from some gentlemen at PTSD clinics and stuff that were turning pens and stuff out there to keep themselves occupied. And I thought with our long winters and stuff that we have up here, it almost sounded like a great outlet for our veterans up here to keep themselves occupied.
I just happen to have a lot of tools and a lot of space to do that. And I was very welcome, very appreciative to open my home up to veterans to do this. And we've put a lot of time and effort into making this a safe place and making sure it's a place that people want to be and can comfortably come here and learn a trade, so to speak, also to get ourselves out of our heads, off the couch and out of the bars. And that's sort of our mental health aspect of this. We want to be productive. We want to feel like we belong to something. And being a part of a group like this has given me a lot of strength in myself, knowing that I can be a part of something bigger than me. I was addicted to a lot of drugs and stuff in my past. We'll keep it simple as that. It's huge part of any recovery is to be productive in something. Even if you're drug-free, alcohol-free, you're sitting at home with nothing to do, you're thinking about the wrong stuff. You're thinking, oh, okay, where's my next fix? Where's my next shot? Instead, where's my next pen? I'm going to get down here and shop and turn something. And it's so much better. Well, it's about veterans getting together and supporting each other. We make cool stuff like pens, bottle stoppers, all kinds of different things, but that's not our main product. What we're doing is we show success by helping veterans become well-adjusted members of society, and we support each other and help each other along the way. And we kind of find, at least I find, that the camaraderie of being together with other people, sharing similar experiences and even different experiences, we're genuinely a support group that, we support each other.
Well, I think the beauty of this group and why it is so awesome and empowering is that we don't know where it's going yet, but the vision is enough people are seeing it now and jumping on board with it that I see this coming into something bigger.
One of our vets come into this group. He might have been here before me, actually. I'm not sure. I think he was. But when we first got a hold of him and started showing him how to do this and putting him in front of a crowd at a craft show, I've watched him just open up. He can now talk to a crowd. He can talk with confidence about his product that he's turned. It's been amazing to watch the transformation of somebody who was really shy, quiet. You put him in a crowd, he'd be in the back corner sitting down somewhere. Now he's standing up there in the front, talking to people, showing what he's done on a lathe. It's been very rewarding to watch him come out of his shell.
They may be going through some kind of recovery. They may have gone through a program through the VA, but once they get through that and they're kind of, okay, we've done this. Now, this gives them an opportunity to keep their mind busy.
I think it's something hard that people always trying to define like what recovery is one way or another, but I think this is pretty easy to show. This is recovery, and this is what it looks like. And this weight like this can be multiplied over and over with activities for these guys amongst each other when they return home.
Other organizations in Maine try to help keep veterans from being isolated and to live a healthier life. One of them is called VAST.
So this is the VAST program, the Veterans Adaptive Sports and Training Program at Pineland Farms. And in addition to like a hike we just did yesterday with a group of 7 veterans, we meet every Wednesday at 9 to noon at Pineland Farms for our weekly program. And today we are since it's the shoulder season, we really can't ski. We've been walking every inch of this campus. We decided to take a tour of the Sugar Shack. So we're gonna go to the Pineland Sugar Shack. I brought some ice cream. We're gonna put some more maple syrup over the ice cream, see how the whole production of making maple syrup is. We have a campfire because it's 34 degrees. So we brought some provisions to make it more enjoyable. And it's really about getting veterans together.
As a veteran, it's helped me link and bond with other veterans. And the really interesting thing is I'm a Navy veteran, but when I come here, I get to spend time with Air Force veterans, Marines, Coast Guard, other Navy, Army veterans. So it's a good way to learn about the other services and see what they did, what they experienced when they went through.
I needed something to help me through some struggles. And all these groups, and as I said earlier, I go to a lot of different activities, not every day, but knowing that I can, that's a big help. You know, certainly someone that's struggling with addiction, they need something to focus on in any activity, but particularly activities such as this, very helpful.
A lot of times the people you hang with will basically, if you're having a problem, they see it. I mean, I can see somebody come in and I can tell that he's got a problem that day, you know, just looking at him. And then basically, you know, I'll say, well, what's wrong, you know, and let him vent, let him tell you what the problem is. And usually, if somebody's, you know, dealing with addiction and stuff, it basically gets their mind off that for a while.
A great program, and it's very important in a lot of the lives of the veterans that come here. You know, we're an adaptive sports and training program, but the bigger part is the social part that gets the veterans out of their homes and out of their heads and into their bodies, and moving around and talking to other veterans. The other big part, I think, is just getting outside. When you're outside, it just lifts your spirits. You get the fresh air, you get the sunshine, and a lot of our activities are outside.
The other important part of the VAST program is that some of our veterans certainly struggle with addictions. And VAST allows you to come here and talk to other veterans who may be suffering similar addictions that you have. And you can learn different coping mechanisms and strategies, and might find other resources that'll help you address some of the issues you might be having with addiction. And I know Christina's done a great job at linking this program with other programs in the area so that our veterans feel like they have a much larger resources available to them for support for things that might be troubling them mentally or physically.
I think it has to do with camaraderie, but most veterans need something. In my experience, if they're disabled, they need to get out. They need to have an activity and some sort of a schedule. And this is something that I see people every week come to this.
Veterans can come, you know, once a year. They can come every single week. Some veterans we don't see for the winter, we don't see for the summer, and it's just that camaraderie, welcoming fellow veterans.
The labyrinth is it's an ancient design. It's basically, if you've seen them, there's some different types. Probably the biggest thing that people confuse a labyrinth with is a maze, and it's not the same thing. A maze has a lot of dead ends in it. A labyrinth is one path with twists and turns. It causes you to slow down. And it's an ancient warrior practice that's utilized to either prepare for battle or when returning from battle to prepare yourself to go back into your family and your society. And that's truly what we use it for. It's a place where, you know, they travel this path individually, although the group all do it. They get to the center. And the whole objective of the labyrinth is to reflect on what's going on with you, things that you need to let go of, right? To unload some of those burdens. When they get in the middle, or they receive the gifts that they have in their lives, they think about those good things that they have. they set down those burdens, right? They'll set down that rock that represents those burdens they've been carrying. And then on the way out, they're preparing themselves to return to who they are. And so it's an amazing process to watch unfold. It's where the students truly get an opportunity to metaphorically, but physically set down some of the weight that they've been carrying.
If I get lost, please come and find me. Send a sparrow to remind me. Put a soft word behind me. Take away the blue. And if I'm late, don't give up on me. 'Cause you know I be. I'm wandering in the mystery, or maybe just do. On the dark side. On the dark side of. And if my thoughts do not come clearly, and if you find that you can't hear me, and if the judge don't clear me, I'm breaking.
You have been watching Voices of Hope, the rugged road to recovery. To our veterans and first responders, thank you for your service. For more information or to watch additional episodes, go to seedmaine.org.
I forgot Kelly was at the end of that movie. For those of you who know Kelly Roosevelt. So at this point, we're going to have Ed come up and Christian, and they're going to facilitate a discussion, share some resources that are available out at the VA and in the community. And feel free to ask any questions or comments you might have along the way.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I think before Christian and I maybe would start, first I'd like to see if maybe we can get a round of applause for everybody that participated, all the veterans that participated in the Voices of Hope. Without it, we couldn't have done this. So I just want to express my appreciation for all those veterans that took a leap of faith and actually put their truth out there. Because a lot of things that as veterans we're not really good with putting it out there, and so all those guys really took a huge leap of faith. I'd also like to thank David and Cindy and Reggie from the Voices of Hope and Amy Line and UMA for getting this thing going so we can talk about veterans and get more of the word out there. So I really do appreciate that. And then and if you don't mind, I want to put a little personal thank you out there to my wife, Joy, who, God love her, has been with me for pushing 40 years now and has been at my side. And she's my moral compass. And I really appreciate you and I love you. So thank you. I didn't have a ton of what I really like to do, but I wanted to kind of introduce maybe a thought, right? When we're thinking about recovery, I think when we talk about substance use disorders, when we're thinking about post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, but in the early kind of stages of recovery, I think there's this misconception and stigma. Often, if you hear somebody in a gathering or meeting somebody for the first time, we use the word recovery, we automatically assume they must not drink or use drugs anymore, and now in recovery. So I want to introduce the concept that recovery is more than that. That was actually nicely demonstrated in the Voices of Hope Veterans Edition, that recovery is reconnecting not just with sobriety, but reconnection to self reconnection to others. What the film really pointed out is that all these veterans were excelling when they were around other like-minded people, when they were with the most important people in their lives and their families, and reconnecting that way. That it's more than just being sober. And I think Glenn from the Veterans Wood Turns. Oh, by the way, they had an amazing craft fair the other day. I just talked to those guys the other day. But if you're just sober, you're white knuckling recovery. If you're not re-engaging with yourself, if you're not re-engaging with the most important people in your lives. So it is definitely more than that. So I just kind of want to offer that as a particular, maybe a talking point. And then another thought I had was, what does recovery really even look like for each person? And I think one of the things that sometimes happens, specifically in the veterans community at times, is everything we've been taught, whether you did an enlistment or a career, that everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, dress right, dress. If your socks aren't folded just perfect, you didn't have enough attention to detail, and someone's going to die because your sock's not rolled up right. And so then, you get out of the military and you're still living by that perfection. And if anything in life has taught us, there's nothing perfect about living life, because, I might get up and stub my toe or step on top of a little trinket in the car because the kids were there and I was barefoot, right? So, how do we move through life recognizing that not everything is life and death? And I think that's the message we need to start bringing to veterans is, how do we pull them out of their own heads that it's okay to go out there and re-experience life and reinvent. And drive from there. So those were maybe a couple of talking points. And then I introduce in the IOP, if you will. So I run a 3-day-a-week, 4-hour-a-day, 6-week program. And one of the things we talk about in there is this 3-legged stool. And that one leg of that stool is sobriety. But then that second leg is reconnection to self. What do I have to work on myself, which is tied to how do I reinvent? How do I rediscover? How do I learn? How do I meet myself again? And then the other leg is, how do I reconnect with my wife or my husband? How do I reconnect with my parents? How do I reconnect with my children? And then how do we bring that all together to move forward and take that step forward? And to recognize that you don't have to do it by yourself. So that's a little bit some of my thoughts. And one of the things I'll say about the VA and why I work there, when I was reinventing myself after a career in the military and doing a lot of chasing this and that, I'll share a quick story about my recovery. My wife, one day, it's like, we got this beautiful house, middle-class America. The kids are doing great. I was really, really anxious. I was really, really tired. I was really frustrated. I went into the house and I just sort of yelled at my wife, which I don't do. And she doesn't yell at me. And she got on my face. I said to her, I wish God would effing tell me what I'm supposed to do with my life. And she got up in my face and said, it's none of your business. You're not listening. And that's when I began to make that recognition that I was pursuing the wrong way. And that's when I started kind of sort of, all right, what do I do now? How do I take that next step? I know, and that's when I took a leap of faith in myself and recognized, oh, I can reinvent myself. I can go to college. I can pursue all this stuff and then get back to helping my brothers and sisters. And I have a vested interest in the VA. I'm a brother. I'm a customer. It's the Hair Club for Men, right? If you remember the commercials. But my daughter's a veteran. My son-in-law is a veteran. My son retires next year from the Army. 2 of my brothers have served. 1 retired. The other one is a Marine. I have a vested interest in the success of what we do at the VA. And is why I do what I do. So Christian, I don't know if you want to maybe offer a thought on recover that might facilitate, and then maybe we can ask some questions or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I just threw Christian under the bus, so he wasn't quite prepared. So
No, it's okay. It's quite all right. And it's more of a privilege than I could ever have imagined being given. And I won't tell the whole story because it would take a long time. About how I met Ed and how I came to work with Ed. And just so to give you a little background here, up until March, I worked with a severe mental illness program, doing psychiatric home visits for the VA, and that was my first role as a social worker, really working towards licensure. Before that, I worked with a homeless trafficked female population in a different context. And really before that, for a few years, I was a guy who had just been separated from the Marine Corps after 8 years and was front loading, I would say the following three things. Completing an undergrad program that I've been working on for 13 years since I had left home when I was 18 and moved to Massachusetts and got 2 or 3 jobs, working construction, working, washing dishes, bouncing at bars, doing whatever and going to school, and also concurrently trying to get into the Marine Corps. And eventually after a few years and getting that medical waiver for that in service. But then after that 8 years, I was 32, 33. And it was back to school, back to work, taking care of my mom and as I had been doing, and just really working into school. And I knew that I wanted to, at some point, find myself back into a period of service, and it cultivated into working at the VA in a mental health capacity. But during that time, from that, I would say, and real quick, just to give you a little deeper background on this, there's a 4-year period of active duty where I served a tour in Afghanistan. I turned 30 in Afghanistan, and the worst thing that would happen is that they would rocket us from the mountainside a lot, constantly. But I had some different responsibilities on that airstrip. It was cold, it was scary, whatever, but I maybe went on 5 to 7 missions. But there's footage in this video, this incredible movie that we all just watched here together, of a place where I remember where I spent 8 months when I was 24 in Alabama province, a city called Fallujah. And I recognize a lot of the buildings that were in the background, and some of the mosques and some of the other locations. And I went into Fallujah thinking, sorry about that. I apologize. Everybody okay? Everybody doing okay? I went into thinking, okay, we're going to go over there. We're going to do our job. We're going to keep people alive. Let's just be really, really careful. Let's be a Marine. We're an infantryman. We have a job to do. And then after that 7.5 month period, came home and just kind of took it, packed it into a little box like a lot of veterans do, tucked it away, served in the reserves. And over the next 2 to 3 years, kind of had some physical recovery to do, and went back to school part-time, was working, serving in the reserves, and then eventually got activated. But after I finally got out, that's when I really started to think about a lot of the stuff that had happened in that city when I was 24. A lot of the things that we saw, did and dealt with as a unit, started losing a lot of friends to suicide, to unintentional or intentional overdose and that kind of thing. And what I didn't realize in all this front loading is as Ed described it, as veterans, we say, okay, let's move on to the next mission. Let's move on to the next critical operation, whether it's our family, our job, or whatever the next thing we're going to do is. The simple side of it is, as one veteran described, is I'd get my homework, from traveling down to Boston or whatever. And then I would come back to Portland, where I had moved after a couple of years, and I'd isolate in my apartment for days and really just went into kind of a deep, and I don't like admitting this, I don't like talking about it, and it's a character flaw and it's emotionally dishonest, but just heavy whiskey use, heavy alcohol use. And I was just numbing myself out from a lot of nightmares, a lot of debilitating anxiety, a lot of other stress and things that I wasn't dealing with. And the love of my life, who I married after going down and getting some long-term help at VA, finishing a program, coming back, and then eventually having a couple more solid bumps in the road. It's called relapse. It's part of the process. Met Ed and did the IOP program, I think 2 or 3 times. And I think one time I said to Ed, I said, Ed, I know we're wrapping up here in about a week and we're all graduating, but can I stick around? Thinking Ed would say, well, no, it's not how this works. And he looked at me and he said, absolutely. And if it weren't for Ed allowing me to do those subsequent additional times, and it wasn't perfect, but I eventually got it together. I don't say I eventually got it together because I earn my sobriety every day. Okay, just like I earn my continued service every single day, working with the suicide prevention program at Togus. So I'll close with this, and I just to kind of pinpoint exactly what I do now. And again, I'm very uncomfortable appearing or speaking in any kind of public setting about this. As a veteran and as a service provider, as a social worker, and as you know, I tend to be isolated. It's like I'll work out in my basement and hit the bag, or when the girls are asleep, I practice guitar or I study and do professional reading. I don't, but here I am on stage. So thank you. When in doubt, call it in. If you have a veteran who you think might be thinking about hurting themselves. Now, this is not clinical practice here because it doesn't work that way. We don't call in every suicidal ideation or case that we get, okay? We call, we make contact, and I interview, assess, interdict, coordinate care, and all sorts of other things that are associated with suicide and violence prevention and the prevention of self-directed violence in terms of injury and violence prevention, okay? But given that, and this is kind of something that I want you to spread light out to the people that you know and love, and this isn't just for veterans. If there's an inkling that somebody may be starting to consider having a plan or a thought of hurting themselves, and they hang up the phone, or you're not quite sure, when I say when in doubt, call it in, that could be the state police going and doing a wellness check and saying, sir or ma'am, why don't you come with us? We're gonna take you to an emergency room so you can be in protective custody and be evaluated. We'll bring you to Togus, okay? So I don't know if that requires any further explanation when I say when in doubt, call it in. But also as a concerned third party, you can call the crisis line, identify yourself as a concerned third party, give the identifying information of the veteran, and then within 24 hours, or in my case, as soon as I get my butt in my seat early at the VA, we attempt contact. And if we're concerned enough and there's enough evidence there to think of, well, they're not answering the phone, maybe we engage further, okay? So without standing here and talking about suicide prevention, that's kind of the plug that I wanted to offer. But please, after we wrap up here, please approach me for any additional information because that's what I do now. I may not be very good at it, but I work like a man possessed in that area. But with that, Ed, I know that we've been working kind of in the same building and through different avenues and arenas, and you formally asked me to come work with you, and I was so scared to go and work in substance use that I've worked in other areas instead. But it means the absolute world to me to be here, to be able to speak on what I do now, and thank you for saving my life. Yeah, appreciate you. No, it's great.
All right. So I think I could take some questions, I guess. What do you want to know? I see some people, and I think we're on Zoom, right? So can they send questions in? Are there any questions out there that could be fielded? All right. So what do we got, if anything? They're bringing her along. Cool.
I'm going to be very nervous, but I did want to thank you, Ed, because you went above and beyond to be part of this show and to get the word out. And I've talked to other people in my industry who have had problems trying to get the VA to speak. I mean, it's a it's hard to know what to say to the public.
Yeah, it's complicated, HIPAA and.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And when we first approached you, you're like, and you went through all the proper channels and you could see the benefit. And you went the extra mile. There's no doubt about it to get the word out. And I think important word to tell people with all the different groups that we had in the show, there's a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for them to hear, it's important to be with their comrades and to be with people like you. We've already had someone say you saved their life. It is so important to get that word out, and I applaud you for doing it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You're right. Sometimes it's very complicated to try to, it's a very large hospital system. And then when you got to consider HIPAA and, power differentials, it's a very, very complicated issue. But you brought up something that I'd like to touch on, if you don't mind, the kind of like that, the common denominator for people who come to a sub program at the VA really is that veteran experience. And though we'll kind of kid around with one another, you were, in the Marine Corps, you were in the Army, you're too busy eating crayons. It's right. But that common connection, that veteran experience is really, really important. And so there's a delicate balance, I think, in the veteran community because, there's the perception, civilians don't get me. Right. And so one of the other concepts I try to bring to the men and women that come to my program is they don't have to. Civilians don't have to get you. And it's up to us to fit back in with them because there's only 16 million veterans out of 330 roughly citizens in the United States. So it's, it's kind of water oil kind of a thing. So it's really, really important that we reintegrate back in with the civilian population, but we don't have to lose that veteran connection either, right? So we can have both truths can be the same there, but it's so important for us to, be able to reconnect with our families, our friends, and our communities. And there's millions of veterans doing just that, right? And so if we can get the word out that, recovery is more than just being sober. It really is this three-legged stool that we got to work on and reconnect with the social environment. So I really do appreciate your reaching out to me in that email. I still don't know how you got my email. It's kind of buried in the VA, and I can't minimize just that the anxiety initially it caused because of trying to figure out, how do I do this and do it in a way that that's respectful to the veterans. That's, this was probably the most respectful veteran document that I saw that I didn't walk away cringing because I felt like it was exploitive, and that was just really, really wonderful to work with you guys. And God bless Reggie. I mean, the number of times, I don't really like that aspect of me, man. You got to VA resource. Let's talk about the VA. I don't. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot, and I do appreciate you.
I think what impressed me with all the groups, I mean, there were many things, but one thing that has stuck with me and I've thought about when I wake up in the middle of the night is that all of you have been, you served your country and you've been through unbelievable trauma in some cases, and yet you came back no matter what the trauma was, and you were committed to serve, and you kept serving, like Christy and Travis Mills and Nick and all of them. And that was very inspiring. And I think it's also inspiring to civilians and vets and anyone who's experiencing trauma.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it. There's, I think there's something, certainly for me, Christian, maybe as well, for all of us that kind of go into this field of helping for veterans is, there's something about serving something much larger than yourself when you join the military that we were able to kind of bring to our civilian reinvention, if you will, to be part of something much bigger. Absolutely, you highlight a lot of really wonderful, wonderful people. So thank you. Any other questions? Oh, here we go.
Hi, so Susan Baker, recently retired faculty member from UMA. And I have seen the amazing work that happens in our Veterans Center and the work that Amy does and the camaraderie. And there's always free food also. So that's a nice benefit. They always have good food. And I saw this, the camaraderie of, I had two veterans on an international service trip in May, and the connection they made with each other, the support they gave each other, both as young parents as well as veterans. It was really quite remarkable. But you say that the veterans, like, I think we do. I'm a civilian. I do think I have a role as a civilian to be part of that reentry and reconnection and supporting our veterans. I don't always know what I'm doing or how to do that. This was unbelievably powerful.
Yes.
And earns, I think, respect and admiration for our veterans. I mean, I am really a shout out to all of you. But what is, and I think from the perspective as a university, how is it that we have Amy, we have the Veterans Lounge, we have great support there, but how as a whole, how am I as a chemistry professor? How am I, how are we, what can we be doing as faculty and university? Do you have ideas in terms of the
That's a
support?
great conversation, actually. That's really good. And yes, there absolutely is, right? Because there was, frankly, millions and millions and millions of Americans out there who are supporting veterans and their ability to kind of move back into the civilian world on so many levels. And a lot of times it's just a matter of, kind of asking questions like now. I know like VA Maine has volunteer services, so there's that aspect of it. As a professor, I know my professors up here when I was attending UMA with my undergraduate stuff, I would offer to you as a professor, sometimes I want to be careful because I don't want to think. Sometimes I think people don't know what to do. And as a result of that, kind of shut down if a veteran maybe shares part of their experience. And so sometimes some of those experiences could make people feel nervous. I certainly had that, not here at UMA, interestingly, but in BC when I shared a veteran experience. Social work professor, doctorate, who cringed when I brought up a conversation about what quality of life seemed. But I think it's just being open and answering questions. Say, hey, what can I do to help? And I think the most important piece is not assuming that veterans are broken. There's this perception because of all of this experience, especially with over 2 decades of a war, that their experience has broken them in some way, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Dented, rusty, bruised, a little chip paint around the side, but not broken, and incredibly remarkable. But absolutely some good conversation. I don't have any easy answers to how to do that, but I think it's important just to recognize that, maybe you get a classroom, you don't know if there's a veteran in there until they say, hey, I was in the Marine Corps and I was in Fallujah. And then so that sometimes that might cause people because they don't know what to say then. I say, oh, and then sometimes we get the, well, thank you for your service. And then that's like, for the veteran, oh, right? Because then it's like, well, what do we say now, right? You're like, well, you're welcome. Does it really work? So we had actually, I think Joy had told me once, it's like, I heard someone say, thank you for your support. I'm like, oh, brilliant. I like that one. So I started stealing that. But honestly, I think it's just opening up conversation and say, hey, how can I best support you? What can I do to help? Especially in the classroom. I know for me, I was in my mid-40s when I took my first college class, so I was like, I was way out of water, and just it's maybe the patience with it. It's like, hey, understand you're transitioning. What can we do to help? That was a great question, though. Wish I had better answers for you. I don't know, Christian, do you got an answer, or maybe Jason, you got any thoughts on the professor's question? You think? So I'm gonna throw you under the bus too.
I
Woo!
You wanted me to get on a microphone, that's the microphone. I would say a basic understanding on everyone's part that being a veteran or being in the military is not a job, it's its own culture. So it needs to be treated with the same respect that any culture would be, and not just, this is what they did. No, it's who they are. So I think that is a really good place to start with, is to give it the same cultural respect we would give any other culture, and including that in our cultural identity would be huge.
Man, I couldn't have said it better, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was spot on. That was spot on.
Yeah, this is kind of a soft point, and certainly doesn't apply to every veteran who's separating and going back to school. And I left my undergrad 3 or 4 times, and then took a break from first grad program that I did. And whatever, none of that matters, except it's important to connect with a veteran in the classroom without maybe doing those things, or saying, hey, thanks for your service. What was it like? Or any of that. Of course, that goes without saying. But one thing that I found helpful, because there were times when I had to go to a professor and say, I think I've been off more than I can chew. I'm registered for 47 credits. Now, it's an extremity, because I'm for laughter, but going to them and saying, I realize that we're past the withdrawal period. And I understand that there may be nothing that you can do for me, and I completely understand, and I'll be back, and convey that to them. And this is coming from the veteran, but saying to your professor, I need to withdraw from this class. I'm having a lot of anxiety. I'm having some issues for my service. I want to own that, but I want you to know that I hope it doesn't affect my grade. If there's a possible conditional withdrawal that I can do, or however that works, and open the communication to the veteran, who obviously they're going to come to you first, hopefully. And just like any student, we're talking about health and wellness in the student population, right? Any student that comes to you and says, hey, I'm having some psychosocial stressors, this is happening, this is my family, I'm having an illness or whatever. There's obviously there's policy related to withdrawal or tuition refund or those kinds of things. And then there's also extenuating circumstances and those kinds of things. And those are just once or twice that really helped me to sit down and say, hey, I realize that we're after midterms, but here's kind of what I'm dealing with. What can I do to meet my end of the obligation? Can I come back next semester? Can we do an extension? What kinds of things are available? Beyond the, and it's all in that soup, beyond the actual constructive, semester and policy and that kind of thing. And I tell veterans that a lot. They're like, hey, I'm having trouble. I'm falling behind in school and so on and so forth. And I say, you're being taught by some incredible people that love what they're talking to you about. So take some time, go to their office hours and sit down with them and say, this is what I'm dealing with. What are my options? I want to succeed. And open that topic of conversation up. Just like when I say to a veteran over the phone, hey, it's okay to have thoughts. I think about flying helicopters all the time. It's not going to happen, right? It's okay to have thoughts about those kinds of things. Get it off your chest, give it to me, and then we'll talk about it. And then they feel better. So it's yeah, thank you. That's all.
I can't get you the parachute, so.
Yeah, no, this is true. We're gonna, I'm still getting reckless. Don't worry.
Amy, did you have any thoughts on the professor's question on that?
So
I'm gonna throw you under the bus too.
Christian just brought up a good point, and it is all about the conversation and being able to talk with faculty. And we have some really great faculty here that are really good with especially with our veteran students. They're good to all students, but I think physical space on a campus is really important. I think it's important to provide a space that veterans could go and find each other. Ed, when you were here, we did not have that.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was a little office. I slept in it a few times.
We had a small little office. But now we have a bigger space where there's food and video. It's a bigger space where everybody could hang out. And I think that's a good thing, because then you can buddy up or find somebody that's like-minded like you. And the other thing I think I want to say is, when, you talk about conversations with faculty, I think the big thing for faculty, and Susan knows it because she comes to the center just to hang out and, all right, eat food with us. But I think it's to be present because it does take time for veterans to kind of warm up or trust somebody. And the only way you could do that is to be with them.
Yeah.
So the more faculty come into the center or staff or non-veterans, the more that veteran gets to know them and then the relationship starts. So I feel like it's a trust thing.
It gets more comfortable. I forget her name. Who was the professor that taught the sex abuse and trauma class?
Magdalena Linhart.
Yeah, so you remember, it was a couple of things in there, but one of her things, you had a journal in that course. And so there was no way I was putting that stuff in the mail. So I was hand delivering this stuff. And I was handing it to her one day, and she comes over to me one day, and she goes, "You still got work to do." So and I think that happens when professors are comfortable with you. So when the professor knows who their student is, and if the veteran starts to share a little bit and they feel comfortable, I think in a video I said when we were talking about if someone is suicidal, if a veteran's comfortable with you, they're going to open up and they're going to share what's really going on with them. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Christian.
No, I was just gonna say, this is from 7 years ago, I think, 6 years ago at this point. There was an accounting professor down in Boston who I had withdrew from her class. And then when I returned to the class, was still having a lot of trouble, and she would let me get out halfway between the class and go for a walk and come back. Just kind of anxiety related stuff and that kind of thing. And she was so cool. She was a younger accounting professor. She went on to teach, get her PhD and teach at UC San Diego. And about a year ago, I sat down and wrote an email just thanking her, saying, "Hey, you probably don't recognize me, but you're in San Diego. You probably work with a lot of veterans now at UC San Diego. I appreciate what you did for me, et cetera." And she wrote me back a few days later and said, "I do remember you. And, your communication was always great." And so it's that connection. If a veteran can open up to you, and as long as they're appropriate, right? And talk with you and kind of share what they're dealing with, they'll never forget how you made them feel and how you made them feel. Let them know that it's okay to go walk around in the middle of class, or come back. And so they'll think about you for the rest of their days. So that's all.
Any other questions?
Those of you that are out there on Zoom, feel free to put something in the chat and we'll relay the question.
I guess if you know any veteran out there that's struggling, whether it's with substances or suicide, or they're just really struggling in general, honestly, the VA phone number is 207-623-8411, and the clinic extension is 5515. And if they are, I give every veteran that I work with my direct extension. It's 489. Sorry, I got to do the whole number to get it. 4890. Call me. I call veterans back. And you don't have to go through the whole thing. And even if I can't help you specifically, again, I'm the hair club for men. So I can connect you to the right people.
Semper Fi.
Thank you so much, everybody. And Voice of Folk, thank you guys. That was really great. Thank you so much.